look into my eyes, oh baby, Jawa, you be my wife, oh baby, Jawa, baby, Jawa. Put your number twos in the air if you didn't do them.
Hey guys, Tez here and welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be a mini vlog / me talking about my day as a Band 6 hospital pharmacist. I've done a similar video before but I had to take it down, so this is that video but better. So before we get started, don't forget to get your cup of tea to have with Tez and let's jump right in. So when I get to work, I normally get changed and prepare for the handover. So I do that by checking the logger for my wards to see if anything happened overnight that I need to follow through. And then we discuss whether any wards need cover. For example, if somebody's sick or if that person is off and that ward hasn't been covered. And then we talk about who's covering the bleep in the afternoon or any other issues that anyone might want to raise with the rest of the team. So after the pharmacy huddle, I then go up to my ward and there we have our own board handover, and it's basically where we talk about the patients who are poorly overnight who might need extra attention on that day, any elective patients that are coming into the hospital, any patients that are going home, so any discharges that I need to look out for, any patients on any specific medicines that we need to be careful of, or just anything that's happened overnight, whether we're short-staffed or whether any patients are moving on to more specialised areas. My ward is a general ward, so I normally see wheezers or patients who might have been bitten by something like a snake, or that doesn't happen that often in England. But basically I just see a whole range of patients. There's no one speciality that comes to that ward, and because of Miss Rona we sometimes get specialised patients who are waiting for a negative test before they can go into that ward, because if they have Miss Rona we don't want them to then infect everybody else on that ward. So because of that I sometimes don't get to attend the different ward rounds, because if I attend oncology ward round for example, it's a bit too specialised for me because I'm not an oncology pharmacist. So what normally happens is after this huddle I then look at my list of patients that I have on my wards that day, and then I highlight the patients that are going home, any patients that need anything ordering, and then I start seeing the patients based on who's new or who has urgent meds that I need to take a look at. So because we have pharmacy technicians, they usually do the drug histories and I do the medicine reconciliation. So medicine reconciliation is where I check that the medicines that the patient has been prescribed match what they were taking before they came into hospital, and if there's any differences, those differences are accounted for. For example, let's say that patient normally has a salbutamol inhaler at home and they are on salbutamol nebs. I'm not going to be too worried about them not having a salbutamol inhaler because they're having nebs, if that makes sense. So it's just making sure that the two lists match, and if there's any differences there's a reason for them. After that I check that any new medicines that the patient has been prescribed don't interact with the medicines that they were already taking. Now I know I work in peds, but for example if they were on clopidogrel I don't want them to be on omeprazole. And that's because we don't want a patient to then get sick from the medicines that we're giving them. And we also want to make sure that, for example, let's say that the patient has sepsis, that the antibiotics they're given match our local antimicrobial guidelines, because we might have drugs that don't work in this region based on the bacteria that we have. So then I also do things like that. Lastly, I check the fluid balance charts. So tiny humans sometimes have fluid restrictions, and because they're so tiny they can only have a small amount, so we want to make sure that they're having the right amount according to their weight, and that includes the medicines that we give them. So sometimes we give them a 5 ml of paracetamol for example, and that also includes the fluids that they get given, such as sodium chloride. So we just want to make sure that everything matches and they're not being fluid overloaded. I recently read this thing that said that pharmacists are always accountable for other people's actions. For example, when someone prescribes a medicine that's incorrect and the pharmacist doesn't pick that up, they are almost more accountable for that error compared to the person who's actually made the mistake. And when we pick up errors, we don't tend to bash the person who's made them. We're normally very kind and we're normally very understanding, and we explain why something is wrong. However, when pharmacists make mistakes, which we sometimes do because we are human, we're not always afforded that same privilege, I guess, and people always say blame the pharmacist, but no one ever thinks to be kind to us like we are to them. Luckily, this is in my reality with my peds supervisor, and I've always found them to be very courteous and kind and understanding, and I always feel that I've learned something whenever I make a mistake instead of feeling guilty about it. So it's good that my mistakes are sort of teaching moments and they help me to grow better as a pharmacist. An example of this is actually when I was reviewing a patient and they'd been prescribed paracetamol at a dose of 500 milligrams 4 times a day when required. Now that patient weighed 23 kilos and they were 10 years old, which if you go into the BNF, that is more than the maximum legal limit for paracetamol for that age, because it is actually 20 milligram per kilo, which I think works out to be about 460 milligrams. So when I saw that patient, I changed it to the maximum, which was 20 milligrams per kilo, as I was lowering the dose. However, my supervisor informed me that it should actually have been 15 micrograms per kilo because that patient was not in acute pain, hence why the paracetamol was when they required it, and because they were not a surgical patient, so they did not need the surgical dose of paracetamol, which just shows you that you can always learn something. And instead of blaming people for the mistakes that they have, if we empower them and we provide them with a safe environment, then they can always learn better and be better people. So after I finish my board, it's usually around lunchtime, so I go back to the offices and I get changed before I have lunch. I normally bring lunch from home to save money because your girl's trying to go where the money resides, where the money resides.
All right, we going. Where the money reside? Where the money reside? Where the money reside? Where the money reside?
But if I've worked a weekend, then I'm usually too lazy and I can never be bothered, so that whole week is a write-off and I just buy lunch. What that? This is broad.
Broad.
Do you think this is stupid? Why?
Are you going to order different breads as well?
Do I have to?
Yeah.
What if they don't want us to? I think probably, yeah. I'm so bad at this. I'll just shake it about. Let's see yours. Are you happy with your choice?
Amazing.
I'm gonna get myself a coffee, as you can see here.
Good work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The drink is so tiny. Look at the difference in size. Thank you. I don't know if you guys remember, but my love language is gifts, and there's no such thing as over treating yourself. So as well as that coffee, I also get a cinnamon bun from Tesco. Honestly, if you've never had one, I don't know what you're doing. Get one.
Can you do that?
Yeah, that's what I did.
Which one is the best?
The best part of this whole vlogging thing is that Nick had to pay for everything because my phone was indisposed. So I might do more vlogs because it means free food, and who doesn't like that? As you can see, I have this treat yourself culture, which is very, very not good. And I spend too much money on this. If you actually want to see how much money I spend in a month, then go check out my video on how much money I spent in a month. And you might be shocked. I mean, I was when I watched it, but you know, we can always grow and learn when we reflect on our past mistakes. In the afternoons, I am usually either on the bleep or I am in aseptics. Now, when I'm in aseptics, I do asepticsy things like checking chemo or checking SIVA. But when I'm on the bleep, then I do more interesting things, such as answering queries that doctors might have about patients. For example, can you put this medicine down a feeding tube, which my answer would be, after thorough research, yes or maybe no, and potentially give them an alternative, I can order urgent medicines for patients, including antibiotics, or order chemotherapy for them if it's not being ordered in the morning. The main thing that I do is to validate discharge letters. So when a patient is going home after they've been in hospital, they get a discharge letter, and that letter basically says why they came in hospital, what investigations were carried out on them, what the plan was, and what the diagnosis was. So usually the plan includes what medicines they'll be having when they go home. So it is my job to make sure that those medicines are appropriate for that patient and for their condition, and that any medicines that you sometimes have in hospital but don't need to have when you're home are not included in that letter. For example, some patients, when they come into hospital, they move a lot less than what they would do when they were home, and when you move less you tend to get bunged up more, so you might need laxatives, which you wouldn't need when you go back home and you resume your daily living. So it would be my responsibility to make sure that medicines like that are not included in the discharge summary, and then also make sure that the patient has enough supply of medicines for them to get home and be able to contact their GP and source more. For example, if a patient is started on a new medicine that they've never had before, chances are they don't have that medicine at home and they need it. So I then make sure that this letter goes to the inpatient dispensary where that medicine would be supplied for them. See, things like that. Just making sure that the wheels that be keep on turning. So yeah, we just want to make sure that patients don't go home without any medicines, because that would not be good and we will not be doing our best to take care of that patient. So yeah, I just do that. So I usually do this until the end of my working day, and these queries then get passed over to the late night pharmacist, and I get to go home and read because I don't do anything else. Which brings me over to my next clip. I hope you enjoyed the vlog. I hope you learned something, and if you didn't, I hope you at least, I don't know what else you do if you don't learn. Hopefully you consider pharmacy. I mean, unless you really hated it. If not, then I'm glad I showed you the light and you can still save yourself before it's too late. So yeah, until next time, bye for now.